Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Everyday History Podcast, where we talk about the history of everyday everything. I'm Dustin Lloyd, and with me, as always, is Tristan Boo Boo Kirby. Hey, Boo Boo. Are you ready for today's episode?
I sure hope so.
Good. It's going to be an exciting one. Today, we're going to cover a topic that's a fucking classic to at least my childhood, but I enjoy it from time to time. Still, we're talking about crack.
What?
No, I'm kidding. We're talking about the history of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
What?
Yeah. Now think about
hints.
Paul's clues.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, the dog one was a bit disgusting. Yeah, I for one love peanut butter and jelly, but only strawberry jelly because that grape shit can just fuck off.
I like
Can't
both,
do it.
depending on of course, what's around for starters, But yeah, you said childhood. That's true. Fucking peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Really? A peanut butter jelly sandwich? Sorry, for those who don't, I live with my friend, so he's the one that gave me these hints.
He's probably out on the couch laughing his ass off right now.
God damn it.
So the interesting thing about this topic, unlike our previous subjects, is this particular subject is the merging of three individual things: peanut butter, jelly, and bread.
Had to be an accident.
You know what? We'll get there. The problem with it is bread has such a not diverse, but has such a immersive history. It's long and dated. So we're not really going to cover the history of bread because that would take us all day. That's like an ancient times thing. But we will cover it a little bit later.
Wow. I'm still just wow.
In awe.
Yes. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich, folks.
And the history of bread is the podcast has no time limit, but my sanity does, so I didn't research a lot of it. But jelly goes back really far too, but we're going to start there because I feel like most people could probably piece together the history of bread at least, but jelly, it's you could probably guess some of it, but we're going to get into it.
Personal lore time?
I don't think we're having any personal lore in this episode, unfortunately.
The personal lore of jelly?
I guess it would be the personal... Yeah, let's just play music.
It's personal lore time.
So jam, jelly, preserves are all different things, which I didn't know jam and jelly were two different things. I thought it was just different names, right?
Right.
And
I thought it was like potato, and I've never met anybody that says potato. No one says potato, and if you do, you're just pretentious.
Yeah. Go and eat your potato chips. Leave us alone.
Yeah. Look me in the eyes and call them potatoes, please.
Jam and jelly, things get kind of sticky when you try to pinpoint the precise origins. Humans have been using honey and sugar as preservatives for, millennia. And food historian Mary Ann Bormans, who penned Great British Bakes and Deja Food, says that the earliest known recipe for jam is from why did I even write that down? The De Coconera, which is the art of cooking by Apicius, I will say Apicius,
Greek?
who wrote it I think so. No, Roman, sorry.
Roman.
He wrote his cookbook in the 4th century during the height of the Roman Empire. I have here, so I believe he was Roman. In it, he wrote a recipe for quince mashed in honey. Now,
Quince?
You may be wondering, what is quince, right? I know I'm asking that.
Yes.
Quince is a fruit that I'd never heard of. It's a aromatic, hard, gritty fruit, according to Wikipedia, and even as a cook, I have never seen a quince fruit. So I looked it up. It kind of looks like a pear, but it's unique in that it has its own subclass. Like if you were to, how every fruit and flower and plant has its own little subclass.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of on its own. So that's interesting. And apparently it's tasty, but they're kind of like avocados in that they're only ripe for 30 seconds. So yeah, that's what caused Apicius to come up with a recipe for keeping them fresh, which basically they'd mash it and submerge it in a container with honey and reduced wine. So it really sounds more like a preserve than a jam or jelly, but that's kind of the first recorded incident of preservation of fruits.
Fruit spread.
fruit spread, if you will. Honey was widely used to preserve fruits globally in those times because it was very cheap, because you could find it so easily, and it held some natural antibiotic properties. However, sugar works better for making jam. But sugar didn't make its way into... Sorry. Sugar didn't make its way to, the civilization until around the 5th century, which was about the time we first started seeing recorded jam recipes. Which I didn't know that.
So you said honey was more abundant. Were there like beekeepers or just like more bees?
That's a handsome question, sir.
Thank you.
And I did not look at that. Maybe we should do the history of beekeeping one day. I don't know if it was a, bee farm per se, or if it was more people just found these delicious honeycombs with these very angry bugs in nature.
Evil.
So sugar, like I said, didn't make its way to Persia until about the 5th century, and that's around the time that jam was made for the first time. The people of New Guinea and the South Pacific domesticated sugarcane roughly 10,000 years ago, and it would later be planted in India, where farmers became adept at refining the sweet, sweet cane juice into sugar.
Ooh.
So I didn't know there was a whole process. There's apparently a whole process for cultivating sugar, which is very interesting. And we're not going to get into it because that's a lot.
Yep, it's beyond me.
So the Persian King Darius the Great ruled from 1522 until 486 BC and brought sugar into his lands after invading India. And as such, Persia became a major player in the sugar game. So the countries to the north of them had no sugar. Like Europe and all that, sugar was not a thing.
Like it didn't grow natively there.
No, and they'd never seen such a spice, which
Like
apparently
it's
is classified
delicious,
as a
so I
spice.
can't get enough of it.
It wasn't until the Crusades that the Western Europeans discovered sugar for the first time, and they would rave about this new spice, quote unquote, and how awesome it was. So yeah, the Crusades, that's how they discovered sugar in the European countries.
Ooh.
But the downside to discovering this fancy new spice was that it was fucking expensive. Like in 1319, there's a record of sugar costing 2 shillings a pound, and that blew my fucking mind. Waiting for you to ask how much
That's
a shilling
outrageous.
is.
That's
That's
outrageous,
insane.
man.
So I found out that
2 whole
shillings is
shillings? I'm sorry, can we just pause for a second? 2 whole fucking shillings per pound.
2 shillings per pound, which is the equivalent
Jesus.
of $50 a pound today.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was my reaction. I was like, oh, 2 shillings, holy fuck. Oh, $50, God bless it.
Jesus.
So imagine trying to go out and buy just a little pound of sugar today, and it's $50. That would be ridiculous. I'd have to take a second job just to buy sugar.
Looks like I'm drinking my coffee black.
So, because of the ridiculous cost involved, jellies, preserves, and other sugary foodstuffs were kind of restricted to royalty and rich assholes.
Okay.
And it wouldn't even be until the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century that common folk could even afford sugar for their tea and coffee.
Jeez.
So, like, what, 300 like 400 years, basically. Maybe longer, 500, 600. I don't know. It's a long time before the common man could afford sugar.
So, what was so great about these olden days I hear so much about?
There was a lot more malaria.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
well,
don't know.
that's something.
But jelly, as we know it, didn't come along until much later than most of those other, like preservatives and jams, which I didn't know. And marmalade's kind of in those gray areas, but it's not relevant, so we're going to skip that. You can thank me.
I'm not
because
even
it's-
100% sure what a marmalade is.
anytime I hear marmalade, I think of an episode of American Dad where one of Roger's personas was Marmalade the cat.
Oh my god.
And that's the only thing I think of when I think of marmalade.
I think
That's
of the
dumb.
dog, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's Marmaduke.
Oh, yeah. Marmaduke. So, yeah, marmalade is a whole thing, but we're not going to focus on that because it's marmalade.
Hashtag
Jelly came
fuck
around-
marmalade.
Jelly
Alright, that's
came along
today's hashtag.
centuries later. We've got a hashtag of the day. We need a hashtag of the day song.
Right, definitely eagles screeching.
So jelly came around centuries later, and I've thought to myself, why, right? They're all kind of similar. Why did it take so long for jelly? That's
Do
because
tell.
jelly requires gelatin to set it in. Like to help it set and make it solidish.
It's in the name!
Excuse me.
I didn't know that, though.
I didn't either. And gelatin does go back to ancient times. They would boil animal and fish bones and connective tissues from such. But the process required a lot of time and labor and was really only found in the kitchens of, once again, wealthy assholes. Because they could afford the staff and the labor of the process required. So
Get all the
earliest
nice
form,
stuff.
Yeah, even back then. The fancy things like gelatin. So one of the earliest forms of this gelatin thing was actually recorded in Egyptian wall paintings, because everything goes back to ancient Egypt because they invented everything.
Of course.
It was a substance called aspic, and it appears to have fallen out of history during the Dark Ages because, things just were bleaker. And I
Right.
found out
It was
something.
not our greatest time. What's that?
What I found was that apparently academics do not like to use the word Dark Ages. So,
Really?
yeah, they don't use it very often anymore. So, to sound more smarter, I'm going to start saying sometime in the late 5th century. So food was kind of scarce in the Dark Ages. I'm going to go back to Dark Ages because it's more fun.
Yeah.
So, a labor-intensive method when food was scarce was, kind of on the back burner, so to speak, because people wanted to live longer rather than enjoy sustenance. And it took a long time, but aspic finally resurfaced as a cooking method in the beginning of the Renaissance around 1400. And of course, it had made a comeback in France because why wouldn't it? France and cooking just go hand in hand.
France is pretty much the Egypt of France.
Cooking, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
France. France is the Egypt of France.
Hashtag.
Hashtag France is France. So, some 280 years later, in 1682, Denis Papin, a French physicist, created powdered gelatin. This revolution, see what I did there? France Revolution. Never mind. This discovery made producing jelly infinitely easier and enabled the development of other stiff foods. And by the way, the English word jelly comes from the French word for congeal, and the word for congeal in French. This is what made me laugh. The word for congeal in French is gelée. So gelée. Gotta have our French listeners are gonna be so pissed. It's not French if you don't. So,
Chew on a baguette and get over it.
jams, jellies, preserves, and such came to North America with the colonists, which makes sense. And here's where things get really interesting. This actually kind of shocked me when I researched it. And it's not one of my fake jokes. I know it sounds like a setup. So, in 1792, a teenager named John Chapman moved from Pennsylvania to Ohio. And in 1805, he began his apprenticeship to become an orchardist, or an apple grower. And the name John Chapman sounds like it's probably really common, right? Generic even?
Chap. Yeah, a little bit.
You've actually heard of this guy, I'm sure. But you don't know him by that name.
What do I know him by?
You know him by his more famous name, Johnny Appleseed.
Son of a bitch, fake.
I didn't know he was a real person. I'm gonna be honest. I always grew up hearing the stories and just assumed it was like fairy tales or whatever.
Yeah, wasn't there like a song or something too?
Yeah, there was, and I didn't even think about that until you just said it. So for most of his life,
Johnny Appleseed. Blah,
Cut
blah,
that,
blah,
cut that,
blah,
cut that.
blah, 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 blah.
planting a seed wherever he goes.
Yes.
So for most of his life, he would travel planting apple seeds everywhere he went, right?
Mr.
And-
Jonathan Seed.
Mr. Seed, sir. So pioneers on their journey through the Midwest would use these apples to make jams and cider because the apples that he planted then were not good for just straight up eating. They were a different type of apple than, you just go in like a Granny Smith at the store or whatever.
They're the diarrhea apples, aren't they?
They could have been. I don't know. I didn't look that far into it.
I don't
But
even
they
know
were
if
not.
that's real.
But they were not like the good eating apples.
Okay.
So, but cider was a really common thing, like a hard cider. They'd make the fermented. It was alcohol.
Okay.
And so one of the pioneers that used these apples was a man from Orrville, Ohio, named Jerome Monroe Smucker.
Never heard of it.
I never heard of Smuckers. So he would open a cidery mill in 1897 using fruits from the trees that Johnny had planted decades earlier. And before this, 1853 in Concord, Massachusetts, who names their child this? Ephraim Wales Bull
Whoa.
bred a grape.
Whoa.
He created a grape that flourished in the cold climates, and that's now called the Concord grape, which is still very, very popular, especially for jellies.
Heard of that?
Yeah. So over the years, different different methods of preserving have been improved, but this is the basic origins of fruit spreads. And
Wow.
this kind of shocked me. Today, in the U.S. alone, we produce 1 billion pounds of those spreads today, annually.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know
a
why
lot.
that's so shocking. Like, I can't think of a person that doesn't really at least eaten peanut butter and jelly, but that's still just so much.
It's not one of those things that you're like, oh, I've got a date tonight. I should invite her over for peanut butter and jelly.
There's a thriving jelly market that I didn't even know about.
Yeah, I never hear anyone just randomly mentioning peanut butter and jelly very often, so I was shocked to see 1 billion pounds.
Schmucker's stuck.
So now we're going to move on to peanut butter,
Shit.
which, contrary to popular belief, and I had believed up until researching this topic, George Washington Carver did not invent peanut butter, although he did discover many uses for peanuts. I always assumed he created it, right?
That's what I would assume.
Yeah. By the time he published his famous document, which we all grew up, learning about in school, I didn't remember the title. The title of it was How to Grow the Peanut and 105 Ways of Preparing It for Human Consumption.
That's really wordy. I'd have just called it On Peanuts.
On Peanuts, yeah.
On Peanuts.
On Penis. So he wrote that and published it in 1916, which I didn't realize he was so recent either. For some reason, I always thought he was further back in history.
Yeah.
But by that time, there had already been several patents issued for methods of preparation of peanut butter. In fact, and this might come to a shock to many of our fellow Americans, so everybody sit down if you're standing. Peanut butter was not even a peanut.
What?
The Inca beat us by a few hundred years. That was your shocked.
Who did?
The Incas.
Those bastards.
They would roast peanuts and grind them into a delicious paste. But fear not, and get ready to have your red, white, and blue blood pump with pride.
I'm ready.
Peanut butter was introduced to the modern world by an American. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it was. Because that matters.
It was one of the most Americans ever. And I say that because I love his cereal. John Harvey Kellogg filed a patent for an early peanut butter or peanut paste in 1895. Now, to be fair, the patent didn't specify what kind of nut to use, so it was more of a nut butter. But he did experiment with peanuts, almonds, and the like. And I think he actually used more almond than peanut, but still, peanut was in that, general patent. And we would probably call his invention rather bland compared to modern peanut butter, but he called it the most delicious nut butter you've ever tasted in your life. And nut butter makes me giggle like a child every time.
He's like, and I would know. I've had plenty of nut butter in my days.
Oh, we're bringing it back. It's personal lore time.
Oh, yay.
It's personal lore time.
Now, we aren't going to dive all the way into Mr. Kellogg's life because holy shit, it's a lot and it would distract from today's episode. I will say that this man apparently was very sexually repressed.
Oh, God.
That's one of the reasons that the Kellogg's cornflakes were invented, was to stop people from masturbating.
Did it work?
I wish I was I've eaten it a lot over my lifetime and I haven't stopped, so.
Yeah, I remember eating it as a kid and wow.
Goddamn, if our mom's listening, I'm sorry, Mom.
Sorry, Dustin's mom. And if my mom's listening, if my mom is listening for some reason, maybe we should have ate more. We should have bought more cornflakes.
That's great.
Sorry.
That's funny as fuck. All right, so I got distracted from where I was at on my list. So what I can say about Mr. Kellogg is that he endorsed a plant-based diet and felt that peanut butter was a meat alternative and promoted it as such.
I guess he wasn't totally wrong.
No, it's very full of protein. It's very delicious.
He wanted to cut out meat on all fronts.
Yeah, because he believed that it was a digestive irritant. Maybe not the meat you were referring to, but definitely the meat that you would eat.
Oh, he was coming for both.
Even worse, though, he believed that meat was a sexual stimulant.
Huh.
You're going to sit there, Mr. High and Mighty, and say that you've looked at a steak and not had sexual thoughts?
Dude, if I eat a steak at this age now, I'm like, where's the fucking toilet? I ain't thinking about fucking, dude. Fuck no. I need like a day to let that digest all the way. That much red meat.
Unbutton the pants and sit on the couch like, ugh.
Right, the boof, signature.
Oh, the hot burps.
Man, the sweats.
Sweats.
I think he was onto something, just not sexual. Maybe an irritant, sure, but
maybe an irritant. But yeah, that just makes me question, like, what did he see? A slab of steak and just get hot and bothered by it?
That just makes me question: have I had the steak yet? Then I don't know. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I'm just so poor I haven't been able to afford the steak. That's like, all right, find me the closest woman. I have to take someone now.
Take a bite of steak and be like, honey, I'm hard.
Just smack the fucking table.
Start slapping the meat with your meat.
Oh, shit. Sorry, Dustin's mom.
So, yeah, right. Sorry. So he had some pretty famous clients who helped him get the word out about this peanut butter concept, including Amelia Earhart, which I did not expect to see in my research,
No way.
and known scumbag Henry Ford.
Damn Hollywood elite all know each other.
I don't know much about Ford. I don't know if he was a scumbag. I've heard some things, but I'm sure he was. But I'm still
I heard he didn't like the Jews, so that's probably enough for me to be like,
what a piece of shit, right?
thanks for the 40-hour work week, asshole.
Well, yeah, he was responsible for that too, wasn't he? And here
Thanks
I was
for the
just
brilliant
bitter.
assembly line, blah, blah, blah.
And here I was just being bitter over the fact that I owned a Ford Explorer and it was a piece of shit. So I just didn't like him for that. But yeah, there's a lot more reasons to hate this guy, apparently.
Oh, there's a list, I'm sure.
So a type of nut butter mania started to run wild, brother. Speaking of
We got
pieces of
nut
shit.
butter fever.
Good Housekeeping magazine ran articles that explained how wives could take their own nut butter and make it with a meat grinder at home.
Careful.
And even suggested spreading the delicious nut butter on bread. So I think that was the first reference to putting peanut butter on bread.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Chicago Tribune sensationally reported that the active brains of American inventors have found new economic uses for the peanut. Which, to be fair, is not as glowing as the endorsements the hot dog got, but...
No
yeah, not too
shit, but
shabby.
these guys really love their flowery language. They really
they
love
did.
to just... They polish up whatever they're trying to write about. I love it.
If you're listening and you've not listened to the hot dog episode, don't listen to it for us. Listen to it for the media's reports of the hot dogs. It's so great.
Yeah, it'll have you
that's
questioning.
classic.
Like, it's a fucking hot dog, but you wouldn't think that if you read the articles.
Yeah. So, as it tends to do when things get popular, manufacturing went up and prices came down, right?
Okay.
And technological advances reformed the paste into a culinary staple. So by World War I, U.S. consumers started turning more and more to peanuts as a reaction to meat rations. And the government even began to promote meatless Mondays, and peanuts were one of the top protein replacements. I've heard of meatless Mondays. I did not know it was a World War I thing. Or yeah, it was World War I.
Never heard of Meatless Mondays before, but okay.
You are not missing out.
Sounds like it.
You could take that tofu and shove it up your ass, buddy.
Right? I don't want beans or fucking peanuts. I want meat.
Fuck's a curd. So it wasn't without its complications, though. Manufacturers sold buckets of peanut butters to grocers and advised them.
Oh my god.
Yeah, advised them to stir it frequently with a wooden paddle because the oil would separate and spoil the batch.
Okay.
Excuse me. All right, cut
Now,
that.
I've heard that peanut butter is a food that doesn't really go bad. Like the rancid thing, but I've heard it doesn't spoil. Is it true?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't think I've ever had a batch of peanut butter spoil.
Yeah, me either.
I know honey doesn't spoil.
Right.
Peanut butter, I'm sure it does, but it's got to be a long expiration time, right?
I would imagine.
I would think so. So, in 1921, Joseph Rosefield of California filed a patent for a process called partial hydrogenation. Damn it. Sorry, my allergies today.
Getting warm out.
So I've heard of hydrogenation, have you?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I'm only going to explain this very rudimentary. So partial hydrogenation is a method in which the main oil in peanut butter, which liquefies at room temperature, is converted into a solid or semi-solid oil that stays solidish at room temperature. So it remains blended better instead of separating. And it was a process that was used to make butter and lard substitutes. So Rosefield didn't invent the process, but was the first to apply it to peanut butter, which made it more shelf-stable. Can't believe I said shelf-stable without fucking that up. That's a tongue twister. Shelf-stable. And while this was undeniably a game changer, the biggest invention came in the 1920s. The invention of sliced bread.
Oh, shit.
What I didn't expect while looking at this is that sliced bread was actually invented earlier than that, but it didn't take off until that time because, believe it or not, bakers were not interested in the bread slicing tool. They thought it was insane that anyone would want their bread pre-sliced.
Look, it's gonna lose its fucking breadness.
Yeah, they thought sliced bread was insane. Why would you want that, right? So,
Right, you want me to eat it for you too?
So the inventor of it, and I forgot to write his name. I'm so sorry. Hold on. I'm just going to find his name real quick.
I'm not sorry. We did it on purpose.
Okay, so Otto Frederick Rollwitter. Jesus, no wonder I didn't write his name down the first time. He kept refining his tool and the sliced bread until he finally created something that everyone was like, okay, this is cool. And look at it now. You cannot find bread that isn't pre-sliced anymore, like bread loaves.
Right. Who goes to
Yeah.
a baker anymore? I got Walmart.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't even know a baker. I've never seen one. So now it's time to answer this final question from the beginning we've been asking. When was the first recorded example of the peanut butter and jelly Sammie? You ready for this?
Tell me.
Do you have a guess on where this might have happened, knowing what we know now?
Okay. Farmers decided enough is enough. We are going to put peanut butter and jelly together, despite what the man might try to tell us.
And you
Am I hot,
know
hot or
what-
cold here, buddy?
Well, I need one more piece of information first. Give me
Oh,
a
the bread.
rough.
The bread.
No, give me a rough time frame, like between such and such and such and such.
Between 1945.
You're pretty close. The first recipe appeared in 1901 in a Boston cooking school magazine of culinary science and domestic economics, written by Julia Davis Chandler. So no,
Damn it, I
you're
knew
way
that.
off on the. Oh yeah, who doesn't know that? She suggested using currant or crabapple jelly, and I have no fuck idea what that is, but she said it was
Ooh.
delicious and, as far as she knew, original, and that's the first recorded peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Wow. Who would have
So
known?
there you have it, the everyday history of the peanut butter and jelly Sammie.
Wow.
This was boring as fuck.